So welcome back if you're still with us. In the first half of this painting we threw down the construction lines and dropped in most of the big shapes, so we blocked in and pretty much finished and detailed most of the background. We're now moving on to the foreground and the midground. So this area is basically it's all detail. So this is the area that will probably take the most work. It has the most contrast of colours and values. Generally, objects in the background have a low contrast, so anything in the foreground or midground should have a good amount of value and colour contrast. So I've turned my construction lines off there. I've just moved those down and then switched them off. I don't use them again, but they were there just in case I wanted to keep them and use them again. So you don't need to necessarily delete them, you can just move them out of the way or just turn them off. So I've started to work on the midground here. The initial colour that I blocked in was that kind of yellow, dark yellow, which, as I was saying, it looks green. And then I realised that there were actually a few areas where it needed to be a lot warmer. So I'm kind of going over it again, pushing some of those colours a little bit further over, moving away from that vertical line on the colour wheel. The colours should be getting more intense, should be getting warmer. This small area here, there's not much that needs doing to it, so I've just filled that little bit of midground in, and then it's overlapped by this tree, this bunch of trees here. I'm starting to work over the edges of these trees here, so the size of the brush has been reduced. And again, we're looking to create that definition and that change in value from the background to the foreground. And all I'm really doing is going around the edges of the shape that we blocked in. So from that initial construction stage, most of the work has already been done. Now just creating the detail of the outline of this shape. This is basically a silhouette, and I'm roughly following the shapes of the reference. They're not exact. Obviously, you want to keep looking at the reference, but it's not as important as the construction stage. the information is has already been laid down, so you can't really go too wrong. So that's one of the trees almost finished off there, just a little bit more detail. Now I'm just going to work my way around these next set of bushes and these other clumps of trees here. And the same thing, we're kind of dabbing with the brush. There's like a clump of rocks just sitting in this area down here as well. I think I decided that it wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm bringing that darker colour into the foreground a little bit more. Just breaking up some of those warmer tones. Again, this is the texture that I'm just creating with this single brush. Most of this detailing could be done a lot quicker if you've got custom brushes with nice leaf textures on them. There's a lot to be said for doing these studies with the brown brush. A lot of people will say if you can't create a painting with a round brush alone, you shouldn't be using textures, which I think is a bit harsh, but it's definitely a lot more time consuming creating everything with a round brush. This particular brush that I'm using, some of you may have tried it out, but it has a texture to it, but it's mostly round with a textured edge. So if you used a texture with a leafed stamp on it or something like that, you could probably create this this tree in a few seconds. So we're just still working our way around the edge slowly. Just getting rid of that round, fluffy edge that we had. So the smaller the brush, when I push down, you get the full thick opacity of the colour. So they're more opaque. And there are a few gaps through this clump of trees, so I'm just now trying to pick out a few of those areas. You can just colour pick off the background and then just fill some of those shapes in that you can see. If that tree was on a separate layer, obviously you could use the eraser just to chisel some of that out. But I'm actually just painting that background colour straight onto that tree. So I'm moving across this kind of mid-ground area. There's a bunch of hedge lines, and I think that's the edge of the river there. This really helps to describe the landscape, the direction, the depth. You can see how kind of flat it is, and the perspective. You've got these tiny trees off right in the distance there. And could be buildings, I'm not sure. So I'm just roughly dropping these in. There's some that probably stand out more than others, but don't go too crazy about putting every single one in, counting them and putting them all in exactly where they should be. It doesn't matter if we miss a couple here and there. I think some of these hedge lines are probably in the wrong places. I'm just blocking this in with a darker colour. At the moment it's a dark yellow. So the dark yellow is my shade. And then we'll probably go with a brighter yellow leaning towards the green side when we're putting the highlights in there. But again, if you're not necessarily looking at the colour wheel, you probably think that that's all shades of green. But it's all yellows. That's definitely one thing I've learnt from master studies. There's a spire of a church there or something like that. And just picking out the edge of this little peak that's kind of popping out. Because we're getting closer to the foregrounds, we've gone slightly down in the values. So we're getting a bit darker there. There's quite a crisp edge there to the way that foreground tapers off and goes down into that midground area. And there's a really high contrast there. I'm now picking up some of the brighter colours and going more intense. We're going back over our kind of our base coat, if you like, and we're just throwing in some brighter colours, a bit of detail. So it doesn't all look like it's the same colour, it's the same value. We want to make sure it looks like it's a lot closer than that bunch of trees just in the background. This whole corner here on the original it looks almost black, to be honest. There's a big cloud cast over the whole area. The only bit that's in the sun is this little patch that I'm just putting in here now. You can see I'm going in with some warmer colours. These are, I think they're rooftops. And the road in the midgrounds that's still untouched. That's an area that's in the sunlight. That's really bright. So I haven't gone anywhere near that yet, because we haven't got any of the colour to go in that particular area. Looking back at this corner, it's still not quite dark enough, so I'm trying to blend it in. There are a few trees visible, but they're virtually just blending in with everything else. You can just see a bit of the local colour variation, but I've tried to warm that little crop of trees and buildings up there with a little bit more red. Gone a little bit brighter, a little bit warmer on that edge, but it's still in shadow, so it's not really bright. I'm just trying to separate it from this this corner just underneath it. Again, they're all subtle changes, but if you're using the contrasting colours, that will really help. Adding some final details on this area. I think I decided that some of it needed a bit more shadow just to give it a bit more variation, help the description of the form a little bit more. The actual spire was a tiny bit lighter, and there were a couple of roads or paths leading up to the peak there. So these are all tiny details, but they help to just give a little bit of texture, a little bit of variation, some interest, and just breaks that shape up. So now we're finally finishing the only area that we haven't touched yet. So this is the lightest and the warmest area. It's the closest to us, so it's going to be the reddest that we'll see in the picture. I'm still going in with a darker colour first. This is pretty much what I've been doing all the way through. It's probably a popular technique for traditional painting, work dark to light. The light should be minimal. You don't want to have too many bright colours. Just noticing a few details that I've missed on this tree in the background, so filling in a few of those gaps with colour that I've colour picked from the background. I think there's a few branches that are kind of swinging over that I've noticed on the original that I'd missed out, and I thought, oh, I quite like the way those describe the tree. Tiny details that you probably don't need to put into a study, but hey. The whole process for this, I think it was about 2 hours and 10 minutes record time. It's probably a little bit longer than that actually real-time painting. I tend to hit the pause button when I create these paintings, when I'm not actually laying any marks down, so occasionally I'll just hit the pause button, scan over the artwork. So don't think I'm doing all of these paintings in exactly 2 hours or an hour and a half or whatever. But I'm not spending all day working on one of these, so I guess I'm still creating these quite quickly. And that's the point of these. You shouldn't really be spending 8 hours working on something like this. If it's a painting that's for you, all the detail needs to be in there, needs to be finished off. You know, obviously you might spend weeks working on it, but these studies should be pretty quick. By all means, do them much quicker than this. A lot of people just do that blocking stage and they've learnt enough. I think I'll probably get a bit carried away with these sometimes, and I think, oh, I just want to add that little bit more detail and just make it look like the original just a little bit more. So we're blending the dark into this light area, this path here. Some of those rocks are starting to appear now. There's a few highlights on some of those rocks that are really bright. And we've got some flowers and some plants that start to appear towards the end. So we've got some reds and yellows and greens. And this is, as I said before, this is the area where you'll have the most intense colour, because it's the closest to us. But for this particular painting, most of it is still in shadow, so it's not the best example of how bright colours generally are close up. But I mean, I picked this particular painting, it really stood out to me. The this area of shade in this foreground in comparison to that background. It's quite a high value, high contrasting painting. So there's some rocks here that just seem to be sitting on the side of the road. I'm just picking up some of the edges on these. I'm just colour picking. Moving around the painting, just helping it all kind of sit together, so I'm not randomly moving the cursor around on the colour wheel and introducing some colours that don't sit very well, or the value's the wrong one. We've got enough information on there now where we can kind of colour pick from areas and just borrow colours and drop them in. We're still working our way up. We're still quite dark at the moment. So I highly recommend you you try some of these studies if you haven't tried any. Let me know the ones that you've tried. You can always send me the results if you want to share anything. It's something that I think I always used to recommend people try, and I don't think I really did it enough. And now it's something that I really enjoy doing. A lot of the decision making is obviously done for you, so you don't need to think about the composition so much, or even the colours and the values. You can keep looking at the reference and just keep making the comparisons. So they are quite enjoyable to do. Dropping in some of these red flowers now, so I've moved right across the colour wheel there now. I think that's the farthest we've gone across so far. I'm still quite low within that triangle. I've just brought it back there. Because of this dark area, even though we're dropping this dark red on there, it's still quite visible, even though we're really low down in the values. We don't want it to stand out too much. excuse me, not straight away. We will get there eventually to a point where there'll just be a few really high value colours. Just kind of dropping in a bit of texture there. Thinking that some of this area needs to be a bit warmer. So I've got the kind of orange colour that I'm dropping in. It's still really, really dark, but you can see it. Slightly warmer yellow there. We're moving up a little bit at a time. Moving towards the green, but we're still not in the green. We're still kind of in the yellows again. I'm just going through that texture stage, just building up that grassy area. There's a few kind of yellow flowers that were sprouting out between these rocks. We've gone right down there. The obviously the size of the brush is really small at this stage. We're just putting in these tiny details. I mean, you could stop at any point and say, well, that's pretty much done. That's a study. I'm finished. And it's just a case of how far do you want to go with it. I can still see areas that need a bit more of highlight. These rocks need to be brighter. They're almost white looking in comparison to the dark grassy areas. So I'm building these up slowly. Few little white flowers dotted about. Bit of texture added into this track in the foreground here. On the original painting, I think that's it was a lot warmer, and some of the other areas were a lot warmer as well. So I've dropped the shadow map on here. So I filled that area in with white, and then selected the shadow map. I'm still using the same brush, and you want to try and keep the colour really bright when using this composite, because it will go dark really quickly. So you want to use an off-white. So if you can see on the colour wheel, it's right up in that corner of the triangle. We're just off that vertical line, so we do have a bit of a warm colour because we've got the orangey red selected. So we're kind of fixing some of these shadow areas that are probably not warm enough. Obviously, if they wanted to look cooler, we could have selected kind of a blue colour. So yeah, that's starting to change quite a lot, just with that additional layer that's added. This rock in the background was a lot darker in the painting, so I'm now trying to pick this out. Basically, I noticed that because of the little crop with the church spire. That was too much of a contrast from that rock in the background. So I wanted the value change to be a lot closer. Now I've dropped this additional shadow layer on the top of that kind of mountainside in the background. Now it needs to kind of blend in a bit more, so I'm just going over a little bit of the connecting mountainside just to blend it in. And this is what I was saying in the first video. You can drop this shadow map in, and it can help to fix some mistakes if you've got slight issues with values and colours. I do tend to use it quite a lot. It works almost like layering a wash over the top. And it's not just in grey, so it's in whatever colour you want, and you can change the colour midway, mix the colours up. I'm pushing it closer to the top of that triangle now, so it's almost going into white. When it's pure white, it won't make a mark at all. So it's actually removing some of the areas that I've laid down with the darker value. But we're still adding a little bit more darker tones to the background because it hasn't gone over that area yet. Now I've moved it a little bit further over into the triangle, so it's got a little bit more colour. Looking back at the reference, I'm thinking this area it's not as bright as it should be. It should have more of a contrasting colour to the background. So it's not destroying any of the details, it's just changing the value and adding some of that additional colour with that kind of wash over the top. In an ideal world, you wouldn't need to do this if you were happy with the painting and you'd done everything correctly the first time, but it's definitely something that you can use just to correct a few areas. Of course, you can create a layer over the top of this and go back in and do a few highlights if it's gone a bit too dark, or you can just erase parts of it and it will be the original layer, so it will be bright, so you can cut things out of this this shadow map layer. You can draw into it with the eraser. Again, I'm going even further into the colour there, and just dab in some warmer yellows. It's starting to make it feel like these rocks are closer than the ones in the background, and they blend more with the midground. There's not so much of a gap, which is what I was trying to correct. If you guys have any suggestions, any paintings that you want to see me recreate, just drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear any feedback. I say this has probably been more of an experiment than an example of what's to come, but let's see what happens in future. As I said, life's been a bit crazy just recently, so I've been having a few issues just staying on top of the amount of things that I've had to do. So again, I appreciate you guys sticking around, and thanks for your patience. I'd like to do at least one of these narrated videos a month from now on. And then hopefully throw a few more examples in there and get some competitions on the go as well. That's something that I'd like to do. So it looks like we're just finishing up with the details here, using the brightest colours now. So these are just tiny little marks that we're putting in. Just to add a little bit of interest here and there. Just draw your eye. Create some edges on these rocks. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. Hope you've found it useful. I don't know what version of Painter everybody's using. I don't know what level of like what level people are working to with their artwork. I've seen some artwork from some of you, and I'm amazed that you're asking me for advice. So you guys seem to be doing great. But if there's any particular areas that you guys want me to go over, please let me know. As I say, this is probably just more of an experiment, just to try this out. I don't really just want to be going over basics if everybody's pretty comfortable with that kind of thing, but I do try to just go back through basic fundamentals whenever I can. Sometimes you forget, and then it's useful just to remind yourself. Just finishing up with the a bit more of the shadow map layer there. Bit more variation in some of those trees, and creating this edge between these two areas there. And I think that's it. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thank you.